then at the end, I'll do a quick wrap up. So that's the idea, and so we'll start the film. Thank you. Discussion with you. There are a couple of issues. One issue has to do with some aspect of filmmaking. We could file that off to the side for a while. And the question that I asked you is, why does the system work? If you think about it, remember they're doing 1,000 times 2 a day times 5. So they're doing 1 million pieces a week, roughly, and with reliability around 98 to 99%. So I want to engage you in a discussion about why it works. I want to see what your model or framework is. I think I'm going to go down there. Is that okay? Yeah, it's more personal rather than sitting up on top of a stage. So how about it? So why does it work? What's going on? By the way, it's 100 years old. So if you want to think about sustainability, it wins on that dimension, although the city's changed a lot. Yep.
I think predominantly the system really works well because people are great at a pretty young age, they're doing the same task in and out. It grows with the community, so they kind of share the experiences and learn from each other. But is it scalable? I'm not sure. If you're on 1 million, can it go to 5 million? I think they would probably have challenges.
So that's an interesting question. So let's go back to your comment about training. Do you remember how long they were trained? 3 months. How long does someone train someone at McDonald's? Or less, yeah, or something like that. So, and there's a reason why the training is so long. So your point about training is important, but why is it particularly important? Right. Okay. So that's part of it. What are the reasons why? That's a long 2 to 3 months. That means the supervisor's walking with the Dabwala all through his routes. Yeah?
The employees buying in, so they expect more.
Right. Well, it's a way to build kind of commitment or interest. Other reasons? Yep. And the low-priced seats back there.
Maybe because he needs to know the fastest way to travel between the destinations?
Yeah, I mean, what do you know about the coding system? So we put that on. If you knew what all the characters in the coding system on, could you deliver it? What's the answer to that? No, absolutely not. You couldn't. I don't care even if you lived in, well, maybe if you lived in Mumbai, no, I'm not sure. T is the name of an apartment, how are you going to figure that out? So your idea about training is very important. It kind of builds commitment, but it also kind of helps them really understand where they're supposed to be. There's a lot of other kind of behaviors that are important in the job in terms of respecting customer, being on time. So a lot of that kind of stuff is getting inculcated at that time. So training's a big deal. What's another one?
So you said training is obviously very important for them. If they had procedures written down, maybe the training wouldn't need to be so long if there was a clear way whether the job was done.
So that could be true if everything was written down, and that's one way to standardize operations. What's the counter to that? I mean, in that case, that's one of the questions about what their own capability of reading and following instructions. But obviously, a lot of big organizations do standardize things by having standard operating procedures and writing things down. It may not work here, but it could clearly work in other organizations. So we're not just interested in this in terms of what goes on there, but as well as other things. So, okay, other things. What else is kind of going on that makes it work? Training's important, yeah? Yep.
They made the comment that they did their workout in the open where others could see and they could anticipate what was happening. And there's good visual there for all the
Okay. I mean, that things are done in the open and people can see what's going on and at least coordinating. All right, that.
And it has a good, strong socially acceptance, the job does, and the need for the service is driven by more than a dollar.
Right.
It's driven by more things than finance.
Yeah, and the need for the service is?
I think it's personal commitment what the person puts in basically. That's the most driving force what it is taking it along. They are coming from a rural area, they are not educated, not heavily trained. However, they have a deep emotional and personal commitment towards the activity what they are doing. And there is no payment which can repay that commitment bond. Basically, if you pay them double the amount, they will still do the same service.
Yeah, that's
It
probably
doesn't
true.
mean that one dabba will become extra more or less.
But, so that's a great observation, but give me, what's the why on that? So the question is, I think you're right, that, we saw people there 35 years, right, kind of picking them up, doing the same thing day after day. And so part of the question is, why, so you're right about the commitment, the question is, why is that? Let me try somebody else.
Seems there's a deep cultural and religious need for the correct food for the cast, for the individual person. It seems that if companies such as, say, McDonald's attempted to fill that need, they'd have to have maybe 10,000 items on their menu, which would not be feasible. So they have this solution for it.
So, okay, what are some other reasons for the commitment? I think that's one. Afterwards, before I'm done, I got to tell you the McDonald's story too. It's embedded in this movie, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Security for them. They can work there the rest of their lives.
Okay.
And of course, there's a lot of poverty for uneducated people in India. So it's nice that they have devotion, but I think it also makes sense. Once they are in the system, they have an income for the rest of their life, and they are building up some securities by selling in the end their business.
So I think you're right. Security is one of the reasons for the argument about commitment, but it's actually, so I think you're absolutely right. And many times they don't have alternatives. But over and above that, it's actually over and above that.
There's a high degree of specialization. Each person focuses on a particular neighborhood, and then so he's able to handle whatever local disturbances might be, and then there's a self-assembly of such agents who all specialize in different areas.
That's right. Okay, and that's kind of repetitive. What about, what are some other factors? Yep.
I think it's more of a cooperative nature that they're working in. It's not that they don't feel that they're making someone else rich by working hard. So they know that if they work hard, that's the money that they're going to get. So being more of a cooperative society kind of atmosphere, they're more dedicated to the work.
So there is a level of cooperation, and a lot of the groups, actually, the money is equally dispersed. So by kind of doing that, it says that I'm not competing with you, and you're not competing with the person next to you. So a lot of stuff is happening at kind of a group level where there's some common notion. There are other things that are leading to this common set of beliefs, but one is in the kind of rewards. Yeah? Other ideas why it's cooking.
I just have a question on about the temp labor force that the double wall is employed. It seems to me that the temporary labor that they hire for people to come in is pretty reliable, pretty predictable. I know in distribution, a lot of times that's a huge issue. Do you know anything about how those temp workers are able to fill in reliably for the double walls and how they're able to fill those gaps?
Yeah, I'm not, so it's interesting language. There were utility workers, so in some of the, in a number of the groups, there were utility people. They weren't temporaries. They were real members of the group, and they shared in the profits. And the reason was because people get sick, absenteeism happens, something happens in your family. The problem is if you drop out, right? I mean, you're part of this highly interdependent exchange process. So the language that I would use is they had utility workers, but they were all part of the organization, and a lot of times when we use the word temporary workers, they're not tied into the organization. All these folks are part of the organization. So if that wasn't super clear, my understanding is that would be the case. Yeah, but it's a good observation about doing that, okay? Other things, so we talked about, yep. Oh, okay, yeah, you're supposed to use the mic when you ask a question, and that's because it's being recorded. And there are these young men over here in white shirts that are holding up their microphones, so. Did that stop everybody from raising their hand?
Yeah, I think this was just it for,
Come down here, okay? I'm sorry, yeah.
this was stayed like more than 1 year, so 100 years, because there is no change in the process. They stayed more than, they use the same variables and the same size for long term. Like one, why it takes long, you know.
I mean, that's why it's working?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that the city's clearly changing. And I didn't show you, and depending if people want to watch the end of it, no one has to. One of the interesting changes that's occurred is that some families have gone into business. So first of all, the city's changed over 100 years, that's for sure. What kind of industries, other things, all that kind of stuff has changed. And more recently, there are some families who are actually working on an arrangement with a company and producing for bringing the lunches for all the workers in the company. So it's not necessarily family to family. So, but they're still using the distribution system. So the distribution system is the same, but there have been both changes in the city. But I would, so I think it's because the idea here is about sustainability. One of the questions to ask is why over 100 years? You know, there's been a lot of other things that have happened in cities in India. How come this is going on? So I think your observation about stability is interesting, but the city has changed, and it's the same delivery system. Okay, here's the mic. So your questions are really good.
I don't have a question.
Our observations are good.
My observation is just that it's a service industry. I mean, there, you know, the whole idea that people need jobs and other people need this service. So it's this interrelationship between what everybody needs. Those that need a job, that don't have the skills and don't have an education and do want to provide for themselves, have the means to do that. And then those that are employed in all of these other businesses and the new businesses that have happened over the 100 years that this has been an ongoing process, have the need for the service.
Right. So it is.
They're all
You're absolutely
providing.
right. One of the reasons that it's persisted is that there is a good match between the needs of the people, the idea, in most of the cases, getting food from home, and the logistics stuff that was explained by Professor Kekri when we were early in the film. So other things that are going on. Yep.
Okay. Is there a question? Is there maybe some sort of government control? Because I wonder why there's only one organization or one company after 100 years. I would imagine there would at least be a few. You know, or maybe there would be one that focused on one part of the city, or, you know, I think in India there's a free economy in that respect. So I would wonder that at some point somebody would think, hey, I can do this better, you know, after 100 years.
Well, these guys are, I think that's a good question. By the way, the government is not involved in...
No, but maybe they give them a permit and they say only one permit or something like
well,
that.
no, it's an open system. And the only thing you got to worry about is the railroad. And so if you should have heard that insertion, I said one of the things the president really worries about is the railroad and the police and things like that, because he needs to manage that relationship, because without the railroad, the system is not going to work, but it isn't regulated. And someone raised, I forgot early in our discussion, an interesting question about scale. That is, could they scale up? And it's clearly, the size has changed. When we shot the film, which was a couple of years ago, actually the numbers were increasing. Over the life of the city, there'd been some very large industries that left, and now more were coming back. But actually, the number of people was accelerating. Also, the other thing, I mean, I think your question's a good one. The other thing is, it's a relative, in one sense, it's a loose system for joining, right? Because all you have to do is apply, have some customers, pay the amount, which was really minimal, and then you're running your own business, and you have this whole infrastructure to help you. So the broader question is, could they do 5 million lunches? I don't know, but $1 million sounds to me a lot to move. Other things? So, okay, well, you guys got to move around so everybody can do it. So someone else over there? Nope. Oh, the boss is going to ask me a question.
One of the things I find interesting is that there are a lot of people involved, yet the system as a whole has a very simple measure, that it is accuracy of delivery. So it seems interesting that everybody finds it